Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ Dhammāṃ Saṅghāṃ Namasami. It's 6th of October, 2021, and today is Wednesday. So normally I'm not so cognizant of the day of the week, but I am cognizant of Wednesday, especially when I go alms round and it's trash day. So Wednesday is trash day here in Redwood Valley. And so walking on alms round with Tanyasa, walking past a lot of garbage cans and garbage smells also. So that reminds me that it's Wednesday. Normally we like to focus on the aspect of things that we consume, but not the result of the consumption, which is garbage. That which we consume is nice, beautiful, pleasant, smells nice usually, but when we're done with it, then it's not nice, not beautiful, doesn't smell nice usually. It's asubha. So when we focus on, normally our mind is focused on what we call the sign of the beautiful, but not the sign of the unbeautiful. So one way we can cool down our sense of infatuation with beautiful things, which ends up leading to suffering if we cling to beautiful things because we're clinging in a way that we don't want them to change, but the true nature of things is change. So then we look at that asubha. It's a very mature contemplation. We look at the asubha nature of things, the unbeautiful. And beautiful is impermanent, so it changes to the unbeautiful. So this can be very good, very cooling, very relaxing actually, very sobering for the mind. It can be very helpful to do these contemplations. Also been thinking quite a bit about relaxation and how to relax. That's also something we all need. We need to learn just what's needed to cool that sense of agitation in the heart. There's so many mental factors at play which keep us from just being able to simply relax. Fear, anxiety, worry. Worry really keeps us from relaxing. Worry, fear, anxiety, stress. These are all different forms of dukkha. One teacher said that worry is the defilement that a lot of good people get stuck in. So you hear like Longpor Liam, no worries. He's talking about no worries. How can you have no worries? There's always something to worry about. There's always something to fret about. We can always find something. There's always problems in samsara. That's the nature of samsara. It's problematic. So we're just doing what we can just to make things good enough and find that, like Longpor Cha saying, like that sense of pa-di, the sense of pa-di. Pa means enough, di means good. It's good enough. But it can also have a sense of just right, striking that balance of just right, getting things just right for Dhamma practice. Sometimes we can't relax because of judgment, the critical mind, the judging mind. Sometimes that keeps us from relaxing. So a situation, somebody or a situation is a way that we don't agree with or we find irritating, so the mind gets critical, judgmental, and then we can't relax. We can't calm down, can't be at ease. So why do we do it? Why do we do it? Why judge? Why criticize? Why worry? If it keeps us from being at ease. When we say it like that, it sounds crazy. Who would ever do it? Who would ever do those things? If it keeps us from being at peace. It's like who would ever get angry? If it's so kind of unpleasant and it's harmful to us in the moment when we're angry, and then it harms others, so why do we ever do it? So I think this is maybe one of the reasons why Luang Por Chah said that the only truly sane person is an arahant. So actually all of us are we're just crazy. That's why we're doing it. We're crazy. We're doing it because we're crazy. But we're trying to become sane, so that's why we're here. So, but it's seeing things. It's like seeing things in their true light, or seeing the true nature of things. Yeah. It's because the mind is somehow there's part of us that thinks there's going to be some sort of benefit from those things. There's part of us that thinks it's going to help somehow. So that's the ignorance, that's the delusion. We think it's going to bring some sort of benefit to either ourselves or others. It's almost like thinking, yes, it is suffering, yes, it is disease, but I'm taking a loss right now for the greater good, or somehow it's going to be of benefit. But it isn't. It isn't beneficial. It doesn't create benefit. But that's deep down inside in our heart of hearts, we think that, like with anger, say a very clear thing that we can see very clearly, very easily. The reason we still get angry is deep down inside we think there's something in us which thinks it's going to help, thinks it's going to be beneficial, thinks there's some sort of benefit to it, some sort of good to it. So that's what we have to practice with. That's the whole practice. We come back to, it can be very helpful just to come back to these key words like Luang Por Liam talking about no worries. And he has a little mantra that he would do, and I was only with Luang Por Liam, actually with Luang Por Liam physically for a short period of time. But, I remember hearing him give a morning reflection. He also does morning reflections at Wat Pah Pong, but because it's the one meal a day in the a.m., in the morning times, everything's done by about 9:30 a.m., and then he'll brush his teeth and clean up, and others will go do their bowl washing and stuff, and then everybody regathers, comes back, and Luang Por Liam gives this daily reflection when he's at Wat Pah Pong. It's probably a little bit different now that he's living at Kokchan, spending the Vasa at a different monastery, but sometimes he'll start out with like these verses Sati Santi Buddho Sa'at Sawang Sangop. So he's using like Pali and Thai there. Sati Santi. Sati Santi Buddho Sa'at Sawang Sangop. And then that became like the title of one of the books they did of his. So Sati, mindfulness. Santi is peace. Buddho is Buddho, awake. Sa'at is clean. Sawang, bright. Sangop is peaceful, also peaceful, at ease. Santi is ease, but deep serenity, deep peace. Can be like a synonym for nibbana. So I think sometimes just having little phrases like that, little mantras, Sati, Santi, Buddho, Sa'at, Sawang, Sangop, it can help us to be at ease, to be more relaxed. And the difficulty that comes up in the practice sometimes, and this happens with me a lot, and I hear people talking about it in terms of the experience of meditation, is like meditating and say like we might reach a point where the mind is not thinking that much, it's pretty still, not in maybe deep absorption, but just it's not really going out much, it's not thinking much. And the body is still, but there's like a unnameable sense of dis-ease in the mind and in the body. It's felt in the body as well. So there's like this agitation or some sort of tension. Even though we're relaxing in the meditation, there can be like a sense of agitation almost inherent in having a body. So like the body is never perfectly still. No matter how still we try to be, there's still the breath. The breath might become quite subtle, but even when the breath is quite subtle, the heart is still beating, the blood is still flowing. There's always that movement inherent in the body. There's the weight of the body. The body has weight, it's earth element, water element. So there's always this like sense of subtle agitation just inherent in the body and having a body, and that's unsatisfactory, that's dukkha. And it's also there in the mind. The mind might be still, but there's this sense of dis-ease, unnameable dis-ease, and that's dukkha. So that's dukkha. So that's with prospect of Ajahn Ñāṇiko coming next month, I've been reminiscing about, well, actually at the end of this month, and reminiscing about some of his teachings that he'd give regularly. And I remember he would tell a story often about how he was sitting and kind of, the mind is kind of still, but then, the habitual proliferations come up, like this person did this, that person did that, and I did this, I made this mistake, I made that mistake. Oh, there I go again, judging again, criticizing again. And having this insight, that's dukkha. So, Four Noble Truths. It's like, oh, that's dukkha. That's what dukkha is. So that insight that there is dukkha. Dukkha is in this omnipresent reality. There is dukkha. That's like the Anatalakkhana Sutta. So it goes through the 5 khandhas, the 5 aggregates, and the body is impermanent. Is something changing and impermanent? Is it easeful or is it stressful? Is it happiness or is it suffering? And the bhikkhu's answer, well, it's not at ease. It's movement. there's movement inherent in it. It's not still, it's not at ease. It is stressful, it is suffering, and is what the Buddha is asking, like, is what is suffering? Can that be considered something that's worthy of taking as a self-existing entity, as self, as atta? They say, oh no. So that's the way it is with the body and with the mind. So these not self, we come back to this not self contemplation, and the insight into not self is the liberating insight is into not self. That's at the end of the teaching of not self, at the end of the Anattalakkhana Sutta. Then all 5 of the original bhikkhus, the first 5 bhikkhus, reach arhatship at the end of that teaching, or during, at some point during that teaching, their minds awaken to arhatship. So there's various angles that we can look at this. Can also look at the teaching of not self. So that's in terms of control, or can you make your body be thus? Can you make your body not be thus? No. Can you make your feeling be thus? Say, may my feeling be thus, may my feeling not be thus, may my perception be thus, may my perception not be thus, may my thoughts, mental formations be thus, may they not be thus. So by having that aspiration or that wish, but they just keep doing their own thing. May my consciousness be thus, may my consciousness not be thus. So the Buddha's kind of putting this case forward that if it was truly yours, couldn't you control it? Couldn't you say, be this way, perception be this way, body be this way, feelings be this way, Go into 4th jhana now, do it. Just if you could just do it by just wishing, well then it would be so easy. Just be enlightened, mind. Okay, I'll do it. Just attain nibbana. Okay, boop, done. But it's not like that. Unfortunately, there's this thing called karma, and ignorance and craving. Those things complicate things. So we have the ability to practice. We have the ability to follow the Noble Eightfold Path and practice. But we can't just by an act of will make a 90-degree turn or make a U-turn out of suffering. So one way to look at it, like control, that sense of, that illusion of control that we have. So our views and opinions, we think they're our views and opinions. But can you say, may my views and opinions be thus, may they not be thus? Can we say that? No, we can't. So we could maybe put a modern spin on the Anattalakkhana Sutta. They're not ours. We might be thinking, well, yes, they are, but they're not. They're arisen based on our conditioning, causes and conditions. So that's that highlighting that illusion of control. So like if control is our thing, that's the sutta we need. That's what we need to look at. That's what we need to contemplate. But that's not everybody's thing. Some people might need different suttas. So, there's another sutta where if ownership is your thing, you need to look at that sutta. So there's another not self sutta where the Buddha is in the forest with some monks, and he says, monks, those leaves and grass and twigs on the ground, are those yours? Like, no, they're not. They're not ours. He's like, would you just be able to walk away from those sticks and twigs and grass and leaves on the ground? Yeah, we can just walk away from it. So he's just so the body form is not yours. Abandon it. Walk away from it. Feeling is not yours. Perception is not yours. Mental formation is not yours. Consciousness is not yours. Abandon it. Just like sticks and leaves, they don't belong to you. So abandon it. So the Buddha is talking about abandoning that sense of ownership there with those things, with this very simple analogy of just sticks and leaves lying on the ground. So these are really, really profound teachings, really simple, profound both in their simplicity but also in their deep meaning, that if we can really do that, that's it. That's the whole path. And for some of us, attachment to lovely things, attachment to beautiful things is our thing. So then it's the asubha. Well, look at this other side. Look at the other side of beauty. Look at what comes along with it. So to shift that perception, to cool the mind down in that way, so that's what we need when we're infatuated, when we're attached to beautiful things, thinking they won't change, thinking they're always going to be that way. Then and only then can we relax. But that's what those practices are for, all these contemplations, all these practices, for that fear, that anxiety, the worry, the angst. It's not seeing the true nature of things. And that's not to be judging or criticizing anybody, because we're all in the same boat. We all have this. We all have this ignorance, this delusion. And it's kind of like, it's painful. It's painful to question it, to go against it, but it's kind of like that thorn or that barb that's in the heart that we're trying to extract. And it can't just be pulled out all in one fell swoop, because it's barbed and it's painful to get it out, but we've got to get it out. So little by little, we just work away at it. And it's a struggle to, say, if you have the image of a thorn in the heart, it's a struggle to slowly pull it out. But we don't want to stop, though, because we really want to get it out. This is something very important for our long-term health and well-being. So many times in the suttas, the Buddha says, he uses the phrase, this is for your long-term welfare and happiness. So he's not giving us teachings to make us needlessly suffer or just torture ourselves. But the Buddha is also recognizing, this is the suffering leading to the ending of suffering. So there is dukkha inherent in the practice. There's a phrase I was reading over in this Core Wat manual, the manual of monastic etiquette, and it's peppered with some of Luang Por Cha's teachings. He's talking about vinaya and discipline and monastic etiquette. And he's saying, when we practice, we might think if there's a sense of dis-ease or a sense of agitation, we might think, oh, it's not working, or something's wrong. Something's wrong. Maybe it's the place. There's something wrong with the place. There's something wrong with me. Something wrong. I'm not doing the technique properly, or I'm not following the instructions properly. There's a sense of things aren't quite right. There's a sense of agitation. And Luang Por Cha pointing out that, that's actually, it's not you that's agitated. It's the kilesa. It's the defilements of the mind that are agitated, because with your practice, when you're not giving into distraction, when you're not following the mind, then that puts pressure on those habits that have caused us suffering in the past, that we've always followed, so we haven't seen them. So the pressure is on, and it's heating up. And so it's the Ajahn Chah's pointing out this, the defilements that are agitated. It's not us. And that in a way it's a good sign that there is that the defilements, the pressure is being put on them, they're being starved of their nourishment. So that's similar to this, like pulling the thorn out, where the action of pulling it out is painful, but that pain is showing that, oh, there's some, making some progress here, it's coming out. And Luang Por Chah goes on to say that with the practice, it has to be this way. And it's the same for everyone. No one's exempted from that. Even if somebody makes some sort of rapid progress, you think of like the prime example is Ajahn Ñāṇiko, who's like natural meditator, and even he had to go through suffering in his practice. If anybody here has read Ajahn Ñāṇiko's biography, which we have for free distribution in English now, he made really rapid progress in his meditation right at the beginning when he started practicing. But even for him, then there was difficulties later on, the difficulty of trying to really uproot ignorance once and for all. He says that it was far more difficult than he thought it was going to be. Like the final stages of the path. It was actually far more insidious, far deeper, far more difficult than he ever imagined. So what we're doing here is by trying to be relaxed and at ease and happy, we're actually getting at the roots of existence. And there's another teaching of Luang Por Chah where he's saying, all this hard practice for years, decades, and just to be at ease, just to be able to truly be happy, truly be at ease. All this hard practice, just to uproot delusion, just to uproot ignorance. But it's worth it. The Buddha uses these really strong analogies of the spears. Like if you were to be tortured by being stabbed with spears 100 times in the morning, noon, and evening, and somehow, by some miracle, didn't die from that, but experienced immense suffering, and then you had to experience that every day for 100 years. And by that cause, or by that suffering of 100 years being stabbed by spears every day, morning, noon, and night, if based on that suffering you then at the end of it realize the Four Noble Truths, it would be worth it, I say. But you don't have to do that. You don't have to do that to realize the Four Noble Truths. We just need to cultivate sati sampajanya, mindfulness and clear comprehension. We just need to stay on the path, and sila samadhi panya. And that's when the Noble Eightfold Path comes together in unity, then we're told that we can realize the Four Noble Truths, we can see the Four Noble Truths, and that type of immense suffering is not necessary, and actually is antithetical to the path. So it's a struggle, and it's difficult, and it's also, I'd like to put in a plug for not being too hard on ourselves if we can't stop worrying, or if we can't just be at ease right now, because it's not self. I'm worried. Well, may my mind not be worried. That's not that easy. I'm afraid. I feel fear. May my mind not have fear. Oh, it's not that easy. It's not self. So it's based on causes and conditions. There's fear. Based on causes and conditions, there's worry. Based on causes and conditions, there's agitation. But we can see that, and we can develop equanimity by saying, well, things right now in the present are exactly as they should be based on the truth of the way things are. My level of delusion or defilement, or the level of greed or anger, or the level of agitation, fear, worry, is exactly as it should be based on previous causes and conditions. So we can develop equanimity. So we make that shift, almost like a quantum shift, into mindfulness, where we see it's just this way and it can't be any other way right now. But in just doing that, in that mindfulness, in in that act of just stepping back and looking and seeing with mindfulness and developing that equanimity, that plants the new causes and conditions to curb the momentum of that experience, so that eventually, and this is this really kind of interesting phrase, I think, in the suttas, that they, when somebody attains Nibbana, they attain it here and now. There's always that here and now phrase with it. So they talk about the practitioner, diligent, ardent, and resolute, and then after no long time, they attain Nibbana here and now. So there's always that here and now phrase with it. So when it does happen, it's based on those causes and conditions, and it's here and now. Like when we think about our aspirations to practice, or we think about our aspirations of being in the monastery, that Nibbana, or what we call enlightenment, might actually be possible, it's off in the future. So currently we might think, well, someday, if I practice hard enough and long enough, maybe it'll happen for me. But then time passes and we keep practicing, and then it's here and now. Then happiness and peace is here and now. So, or we might think, well, I don't have enough parami, it's probably not possible for me. I've got too much delusion, I've got too much defilement. No, but that's how it was for the Buddha. I mean, he had defilement, and then he didn't have defilement. So it's through the practice. It's more about that sense of perseverance, but also patience and willingness to stay on the path. Right speech, willingness to hold our tongue when we're about to engage in wrong speech. Right action, willingness to restrain ourselves when we're going to do something that we know to be unskillful. Right view, seeing this is suffering, this is the cause of suffering, this is the end of suffering, and so on. All these things, right mindfulness, right effort. So staying on the path, not getting off the path. When we do that, it's for our long-term welfare and happiness, not for anything else. Leave that for reflection this evening. Evening.